There's nothing like Broadway, kid, nothing so grand, where each purple feather is perfectly found.
Hello and welcome to the Nothing Like Broadway podcast. I am writer-composer David Rackoff, the writer-composer of the upcoming off-Broadway musical Nothing Like Broadway, and this is Nothing Like Broadway, the podcast, where each week we pick a song from musical theater and then we pick it apart to find out how the lyrics work, how the music works, how it all works together in context to help tell the story of the show. A quick warning, this episode will contain lots of foul language because this song contains lots of foul language. And so today we are doing Hasa, Diga, Eebowai from the Book of Mormon.
There isn't enough food to eat. Hasa, Diga, Eebowai. People are starving in the street. Hasa, Diga, Eebowai.
So this song occurs about a quarter of the way through Act 1. The Book of Mormon, really quickly, is the story of these two Mormon missionaries from America, one of whom is this very uptight, handsome, by-the-rules kind of guy, and the other is a short, heavy, nerdy, overly enthusiastic, kind of dweeby guy. And they are an unlikely pair. They don't really get along for most of the show. And they are very naive American Mormon missionaries who are sent to Uganda, which obviously is a place that has a lot of problems. Like some of the postings for the missionaries are like Orlando or Arizona or Paris, like very sort of fun vacation-y places for these two young guys, I think they're like 19 or something, to go to. These two get sent to probably the most difficult location in the world for them to try to proselytize and convert local people there to their religion. And so the main premise of the show is that they are very naive and they encounter real problems in Uganda when they get there. And then they end up having lots of adventures and struggles, but in a strange way, they sort of both lose some of their confidence in the strictures of their religion, but also take the spirit of their religion and end up sort of kind of trying to do some good eventually. And the confident, cocky one ends up taking a backseat to the dweeby, nerdy one, who ends up really kind of seeing the world from the perspective of the Ugandans, and I think genuinely trying to make a difference there. And so it is a comedy show. It's written by Matt Parker and Trey Stone, who are the creators of South Park, and Robert Lopez, who did the music for Avenue Q, and has gone on to do, I think, Frozen and stuff. So let's go back for a minute to when it opened. I saw it in LA on the first time it toured through there, and it was a huge hit right off the bat, and it got like unbelievably rave reviews, which was sort of surprising because you're thinking like, okay, it's the South Park guys. Is it just going to be like fart jokes? And the answer is no, it is not. It is much more intense and also more deep than a lot of South Park, although South Park's great too. The song takes place shortly after when these two Mormon missionaries, Elder Price, who's the handsome cocky one, and Elder Cunningham, who is the dweeby one, they are really excited to see what Uganda is going to be like. And in fact, earlier when they get assigned Uganda as their location, Elder Cunningham says, "Oh, like Lion King," which gets a big laugh because then we realize, oh, okay, so they think they're going to the Lion King version of Africa, and they're actually going to presumably go to the actual real life, much grittier place that is not this fantastical, magical Disney cartoon. And so that's the seed of the song, is it's like showing you not like Lion King. It uses the Lion King as its main point of reference because that is the main point of reference for these two characters and kind of also for the audience. Like when we think of Africa and musicals, you go right to Lion King. So when the boys arrive there, their luggage gets stolen and they are, shocked to see what the conditions on the ground are actually like. And a man from the village in Uganda that they are at welcomes them in and tries to explain their way of thinking to these two American Mormon missionary boys. So the boys are complaining about all these bad things that have happened to them, like their luggage got taken. The local Ugandan man says, "Oh, we have a phrase to help deal with that. It's Hasa, Diga, Eebowai. You raise your hands to the sky and say Hasa, Diga, Eebowai." And the boys are like, "Oh, it's like Hakuna Matata in The Lion King." And he's like, "Yeah, kind of." And it is kind of like Hakuna Matata, which means, in the Lion King movie, no worries for the rest of your days. And so he's like, it's kind of that. And so everyone starts chanting Hasa, Diga, Eebowai, and they get the Mormon boys to participate. And so they're saying Hasa, Diga, Eebowai. And then in one of the funnier moments in any show that I've seen, Elder Price, who's the sharper of the two Mormon boys, is like, what exactly does that mean? Because he's starting to catch on that maybe this isn't quite cool for them to be saying. And the man says, I'll play you that part because it's very funny.
Excuse me, sir, but what exactly does that phrase mean?
Well, let's see. Eebowai means God, and Hasa Diga means fuck you. So I guess in English it would be fuck you, God. Hasa Diga Eebowai.
And so that's when Elder Price first realizes, oh, this is something we shouldn't be saying. The audience has kind of picked up on this before he even asks. You kind of get that there's something that's going to be not totally right about it. And then Elder Price asks and finds out the clip that we just heard. And then that goes on for another about minute. Elder Cunningham, who has not heard what the actual translation is and what he's saying, is just like getting into it and dancing around with the local people, saying this over and over again. And it's really funny. I mean, this whole show is really funny. It's a great show. But it's really, really funny because the audience gets it, and then Elder Price gets it, and the very last person to get it is Cunningham, who's kind of the dim but enthusiastic bulb in this situation. I don't know how a bulb is enthusiastic, but you get my point. And so it's this dramatic irony, basically, of the audience knowing something more than what the characters know. And it's really funny watching them catch on and then watching Elder Cunningham make a blasphemous fool of himself for like a minute. And it's one of my favorite things to do, is like to have the audience like one step ahead of where the characters are. Nothing Like Broadway, the musical that I wrote that is coming to Off-Broadway this year, has a lot of that. There's just a lot of situations where the audience knows like 30 seconds or a minute before the character's on stage. And it's a really fun thing to do as a writer and as an audience member. It's fun just to be a part of that, where you, like, as a community, as the audience, is laughing at something that the characters on stage are not yet privy to. And you can also do it, with serious things. But the idea is that it's just really, really fun to have the audience sort of congeal as this wiser body of humanity than the foolish people we're watching on stage, which is, what comedy classically is about. Lord, what fools these mortals be. I think that's from Midsummer Night's Dream. People are foolish, but at the end, they are kind-hearted and have a good result. That having been said, what's happening in the audience, I saw it when it first came to LA. I didn't know that much about it. I knew that I liked South Park. I knew that it was like a hot ticket. And I knew that it was going to be edgy. But there's edgy and then there's edgy. I remember sitting in the audience when they were like, fuck you, God. I was like, whoa. And like you could just feel a chill go across the audience. Like everyone's jaw is on the floor. Now it's like a touristy show and it's been running for, 15 years or something. But at the time, it was still something where, a lot of the theater-going audience, especially like in LA or on tour, are older people, more conservative people, but you sort of feel like it has the imprimatur of success on it, of mainstream success. And so you feel like, well, how edgy can it really be? And the answer is very edgy. You have the whole stage full of people going, fuck you, God, over and over and over again. Sometimes they're saying it in the Ugandan Hasa Diga Eebowai. Sometimes they're just literally saying, fuck you, God. And it was really, really shocking. Like some people walked out at this point during this song. A couple people walked out. It was a big theater, but a couple people walked out. Some people were not. Nobody was laughing at first. It took like a few seconds for people to start being like, okay, all right, Book of Mormon, I see you. I'm on for the ride. And most people were on for the ride. I was on for the ride, but I really was just like, it takes a lot to shock me. I'm not a easily shockable person. I'm not Mormon. I'm not going to be like personally offended, but it is still real shocking. So after a little bit, it goes from silence to shock to titters to people are howling because it's so funny. It's a really risky way to write. Like, this is a really brave form of comedy that Trey Parker and Matt Stone and Robert Lopez are doing here. And it creates a real communal theatrical experience. Like, sometimes when you are watching a play or a movie or a musical, you sort of just get lost up in it and you sort of almost feel like you're just inhabiting the world. And sometimes you are very aware that you're in an audience surrounded by people. And that's part of what's exciting about theater. In high school, we learn about the willing suspension of disbelief, which is sometimes part of it. But sometimes in a stage musical or play, part of it is that we have not suspended our disbelief. We are now for a couple minutes aware that this is all really happening in real time and there are all these people around me and how is everyone going to react to this? Another thing that makes this acceptable to most people is that it's incredibly edgy, but it's not making fun of the Ugandans, which is a very, very fine line to walk. And I think that they've done a couple tweaks here and there in the last couple of years to just be extra careful that they're not making fun of the Ugandans. It's making fun of the naivete of the two Mormon boys, and it's not exactly making fun of Mormonism, really. Like, they're pretty careful about not totally making fun of the religion of the Latter-day Saints, Mormon Church. It really is about the sort of white savior and naive optimism that they're making fun of. And like that is really most of what we are laughing at. We'll talk a little bit more later about the Mormon Church reacting to this show in a really interesting way. But the other thing as far as context that this song does, this is sort of the hinge point of the show where it goes from the first 4 or 5 scenes and songs are all taking place from the point of view of the American Mormon kids. And all of a sudden now we are switching over, now that we've arrived in Uganda where we're going to stay for the rest of the show, now it really is the Ugandans' world. And the kids are the fish out of water who are wrong in how they thought the world was. It's switching where the center of the show is and who the center of the show is. And the center of the show is the Ugandans and their lives and their struggles. And so that's a pretty heavy lift for a song, especially one that is incredibly funny, incredibly shocking, and also like catchy and like silly and fun. And so it's a, pretty amazing song. Like this song, if this song didn't work, the show wouldn't work. Or the show would just be a much softer show, like a much more like silly, just a comedy. This elevates it into a higher level of theater, basically. You can't overstate how hard this song would have been to song spot. Like we've talked about song spotting, where you were figuring out where the songs in the show are going to be and what they're going to be. There obviously needs to be a Welcome to Uganda song. This is the most extreme version of it that really tells you what the show is going to be from here on out. So musically, this song is a complete riff on Hakuna Matata from The Lion King, and also a little bit The Circle of Life from Lion King. And it's a pretty simple song. So basically, one of the things about this song, and also the Lion King songs, is that they're written sort of in like a kind of standard sort of pop, pretty basic sort of way. I mean, Elton John wrote the music to Lion King, so it's like, great, he's great. But he's not like particularly interested in African styles of music. And so he wrote the songs, apparently, Elton John in Lion King, wrote the songs more as like pop songs, and then Hans Zimmer, the orchestrator, and some other people involved helped to make them sound authentic to Africa in The Lion King. And they're basically borrowing all of that stuff for this song to make it sound with the chanting and the instrumentation and the harmonies all have a very sort of authentic African kind of sound. It's sort of a photocopy of a photocopy from the authentic-ish sound that Hans Zimmer and people gave to Elton John's music in The Lion King. Here, Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and Robert Lopez basically did the same thing. They sort of wrote a catchy, light, bouncy song, and then the orchestrator and arranger came in and made them sound very African. And that's part of what the fun is of this song. One of the big laughs for me in this song was when the townspeople first start chanting in a way that sounds very Lion King, very authentic, because you're like, oh God. Because there's a world where it's the South Park people. So there's a world where it's just going to be goofy songs, and they're going to have some weird stereotypes of Africans, or just like, it's just going to be completely silly. This is like, oh, no. We are really going to have, and they're doing dances that seem, to me, what do I know? But it seems like they're really taking the dignity of the Ugandans seriously, musically and dance-wise. Let me play you a little bit of what that sounds like at that moment. So this is the first time that we really hear the African harmonies.
Hasa, Diga, Eebowai. Hasa,
All right, so let's talk about the lyrics for this song. And just before we go further, because I'm about to gush about this song, there are some sloppy technical lyric things here in the song. Like most of the show of the Book of Mormon is actually very, very well crafted and like perfect rhymes, perfect scans, really good music that sounds like old Broadway. This song, there's a lot of false rhymes because they're going for the joke. And it's something that I can absolutely forgive in a comedy like this, where it's just about this really complicated story hinge point that they're trying to create. And also it has to be funny, and it has to be authentic in a way that gives the people their dignity and shocks the two Mormon missionary boys and also everybody sitting in the audience. So, all is forgiven. If you're going for the joke and you get the joke, fine. So Mafala, who is the town sort of spokesperson who's talking to our Mormon boy heroes, says, "There isn't enough food to eat. Hasa Diga Eebowai. People are starving in the street. Hasa Diga Eebowai. So eat street, perfect rhyme. And it just sets up, okay, so there's real problems. People are starving, not enough food to eat. I mean, you could, if you wanted to be an asshole about it, you could say there isn't enough food to eat, people are starving in the street. It's kind of saying the same thing. So like, again, that's not what we're doing today. Today it's not about me picking apart lyrics, because it's very effective. And also, you don't want it to be too dense because it's a very complicated idea that we're trying to get the audience to understand. So it's okay to repeat yourself, which is basically what there isn't enough food to eat and people are starving in the street, both meaning the same thing. So then the follow-up couplet to that is, we've had no rain in several days, Hasa Diga Eebowai, and 80% of us have AIDS, Hasa Diga Eebowai. So again, not a perfect rhyme. Days, AIDS, doesn't quite rhyme, but it really ups the ante to all of a sudden we're getting AIDS involved in Africa. Things are getting serious. We're now realizing, okay, this isn't just a South Park episode. These are real people who have real problems. Many young girls here get circumcised. Their clits get cut right off. Way-oh. And so we say up to the sky, Hasa Diga Eebowai. So all of a sudden now we're into female circumcision, which is a real dark, heavy thing to be talking about in a comedy song. But it's sort of letting us know, before we get to the actual reveal of what the phrase is, these are people with real serious problems. As the song gets bouncier and bouncier and more celebratory, the circumstances that they're dealing with get more and more serious. So Mephala says, now you try. Tilt your head up to the sky, list off all the bad things in your life. And so then the two Mormon boys start listing things that are, we can already tell these are very small potatoes compared to what the actual people who are in this village are dealing with. So somebody took our luggage away, the plane was crowded and the bus was late. So again, fake rhyme, away, late, doesn't really rhyme. And then Mephala says, when the world is getting you down, there's nobody else to blame. Raise your middle finger to the sky and curse his rotten name. And that's when we as the audience realize, oh, now I get what he's saying. And then Elder Price is like, what? And then Elder Cunningham is clueless in the background, just keep singing it. And then we get to the bridge, basically, of the song, where Mephala is introducing all the different characters in the town, which is very much like in tradition when they're like, here's the sons, here's the daughters, here's the mama and the papa. And also like in the beginning of Beauty and the Beast, where it's like, here goes the baker with his tray like always. And you're introducing all the different people in the town in just sort of like a local color sort of way. A ton of musicals had this, especially older Rodgers and Hammerstein era, Golden Era musicals do, except the riff on it, which is fucking brilliant, is, here's the butcher, he has AIDS. Here's the teacher, she has AIDS. Here's the doctor, he has AIDS. Which is so funny. It's very South Park, but it really is like, it's so knowledgeable of Broadway history and Broadway styles, but updating it in a way, rather than having it be this crazy rhymey thing, it's just, there's no joke. It's just, this person has AIDS, this person has AIDS, this person has AIDS, this person has AIDS. There's a little pull the rug out thing where he says, here's my daughter, she has a wonderful disposition. She's all I have left in the world, and if either of you lays a hand on her, I will give you my AIDS. Which is very funny, introduces the third lead, which is his daughter, who becomes the third main character in the show. There's a couple things they're doing here. So they're saying there's the butcher, there's the teacher, there's the doctor. So like, just in case you thought these were like savages who are, whatever. It's like, no, we've got like a butcher, we've got a teacher, we've got a doctor. We are regular people who are in this circumstance. And then very, very smartly, on this reversal, this first is just a joke. Here's the doctor, he has AIDS. Here's my daughter, she has a wonderful disposition. So it's just a joke that he's not saying that his daughter has AIDS, which, also sort of makes it okay that she's the love interest later in the show, I guess. But by using the phrase wonderful disposition, and especially the word disposition, he's using big English vocabulary. So it's like saying he's not an idiot. These people are not idiots. These people are not savages. This guy has a really healthy vocabulary. These are just their circumstances. And it's such a nice way of making sure that we are all on board as an audience, and that the two boys are on board with, these are not dum-dums who need your white savioring. These are people who have real problems. And so it's a very clever lyric choice to have him use the phrase wonderful disposition. The boys sort of realize, and we as an audience realize, that these are not people intentionally being blasphemous. These are people who are coping with their circumstances. But then this is a comedy song in a comedy show. And so how do you up the ante for that And so what happens next, all the Ugandans basically come to the front of the stage with sort of harsh lighting on them, speaking directly to the audience. If you don't like what we say, try living here a couple days. Again, a false rhyme, but that's fine. Watch all your friends and family die. Hasa, Diga, Eebowai. And that is where they're like challenging us. Like, we dare you, audience, people who paid $200 a seat, who have gray hair and, you know, this is part of their subscription, who are like offended. It's like, no. How dare you judge us? Try walking a mile in our shoes before you judge us. And it's very like Brechtian, confrontational, take you out of the moment, but it's also like, whoa, like, yeah, I guess who am I to judge these people? And it's brave theater. Like, it's bold and brave. And then, as far as progression goes, upping the ante is
When God fucks you in their butt,
Hasa, Diga, Eebowai.
fuck God right back in his cunt.
I don't hear the C word very often in a musical, let alone like a fun, silly musical about Mormon boys and little ties. So that is sort of shocking. I mean, if you're, a South Park fan, it's not that shocking, but it's still pretty shocking. And saying fuck you, God, in the ass, mouth, and cunt is, like, it's hard to, I can't imagine. I would imagine that they were like, okay, what is the most, like, let's just get it out. What is the most offensive thing we could say here to really make our point, and also to sort of let the audience know that, okay, we've got the, we've ripped the Band-Aid off. It's hard to imagine getting more offensive than that. And then they say it over and over again, facing the audience in that same sort of confrontational Brechtian way of, fuck you, God, in the ass, mouth, and cunt. Fuck you, God, in the ass, mouth, and cunt. And it's very, very, and they just keep going, and then the end is just, fuck you, God, fuck you, God. I mean, just looking at it, even like me, I'm not religious, but like just saying that feels like a little bit like, ooh, I don't feel great saying this. But it is such a great way of letting you know that this is not just a silly comedy. It's shocking, but it's not shock comedy. It's satire. And that's the sort of main point that the audience needs to understand at this point in the show, is that they are not just watching a silly comedy like the producers, which I absolutely adore the producers. I'm not citing it, but this is a different genre. This is satire. And so this is where it goes from, like, it's not just fart jokes. There probably are some fart jokes, but this is actual social satire talking about, people and their different worldviews and how we view each other. Like, there's big stuff in this. Like, this is the kind of drama stuff that we study in school, just done in a very goofy musical theater, South Parky kind of way. And so that informs how you watch the rest of the show. You're now being like, okay, this is satire. We're not just going to be making fun of Ugandans, which is great, but we're also not totally making fun of Mormons. If you're a fan of South Park, which I am, you will know that they had a whole episode on Mormonism years before the Book of Mormon came out, so you sort of know their feelings about Mormons, and they grew up around a lot of Mormons and Mormon friends, and, their thinking is that the episode was very, very funny of South Park. When the Book of Mormon was coming out, I was like, that's weird, didn't they already kind of say everything they needed to say about Mormons when they did their South Park episode about it? But no, they just went off in a completely different direction. But their feelings are basically, it's, to put it into my own words, is that some of the teachings are a little silly, like with the golden plates, and some of the specifics, as they are in all religions, have their silly things if you really look at it. But these are generally well-meaning people who want to do good in the world, who seem like they have very happy families genuinely, and they seem like good people who are doing good things. I mean, except, if you're gay or, there's a lot of exceptions to this, or if you're black before the 70s or whatever, like, I don't know, it was like officially, anyways. But the point is, the attitude that Trey Parker and Matt Stone have toward the Mormon religion is that, like, it's a pretty effective way of living your life as a good person, even though some of the details are silly and some of the effects of it on certain kinds of people are not great. But overall, it's not like hateful toward Mormons. And one of the things that I noticed, and that probably most people notice when you go see the Book of Mormon, I don't know if that's still the case, but at the time, was the Mormon Church had an ad, a full-page ad, in the playbill, saying, it was something like, if you like the musical, try reading the book. Which, when I saw that, I was like, because I read that before I saw the show, so I didn't really know quite how dark they were going to go with it. But I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, that they did that, like that the Mormon Church was like, okay, rather than just completely protesting it and making this like us against them kind of war, they're like, you know what, even though the show is, not what they would probably ideally represent themselves with, there's enough here that is positive that we are going to put an ad in it. And so having seen that before the show, that the Mormon Church actually had an ad that wasn't like, we stand against everything that the show says. It's just like, hey, if you enjoy the musical, try reading the book. And then seeing this song where they're like, fuck you, God, in the ass, mouth, and cunt. It's like, wow, that just really like sort of, I don't know, it makes the Mormon Church seem cooler than I had previously thought, I guess. I mean, I didn't, join and become a Mormon, but it definitely lets you see that even the Mormon Church is open to the possibility that this is not just the South Park guys pissing all over their religion. It is a piece of social satire that has more to say about humanity than just Mormons are bad and Ugandans are dumb. It's like, no, it's not that. It's that different people have different worldviews and different experiences. How do we coexist and make a better world? Which is, what this show, I think, is about and what this song is setting up. So if you, again, I've said this a million times in the show, I do not support bootlegs, but if you are in a YouTube kind of mood, definitely go look up this song because it's really fun to see it progress moment to moment as the audience starts to clue into what's happening. And, it's a little bit less like I saw the Book of Mormon again a few years ago on Broadway, and it definitely was a little bit more, just because it's such a tourist show now and it's been going for so long, and everybody who was going to see it on the cutting edge already saw it. So it felt a little bit safer just because if it's been running on Broadway for 15 years, how dangerous could it be? Because it really felt dangerous when I first saw it. I was like, whoa. But it still is a great show. If you ever get a chance to go see it, it's a really fun show. But in the meantime, don't tell them I sent you, but you might want to look up some Hasa, Diga, Eebowai on YouTube because it's such a fun song and it does so much heavy lifting for the tone of the show, for the message of the show, for the story of the show, and for the characters in the show, which is, what more can you ask from a song that basically sounds like it's going to be a silly joke, but it's actually a very, very muscular song that gets a lot of work done for the show. All right, so this has been the Nothing Like Broadway podcast. And if you enjoyed the Nothing Like Broadway podcast, I bet you will enjoy Nothing Like Broadway the musical, which is coming to Off-Broadway this fall. And in the meantime, please follow us at Nothing Like Broadway on Instagram. You can email me, nothinglikeBroadway@gmail.com, if you have a suggestion for a song for us to pick apart, or if I got anything factually wrong. And in the meantime, let's go out listening to a little bit of the original Broadway cast of The Book of Mormon, singing Hasa, Diga, Eebowai